Tonight on Ukraine Today. Situation on the front line. Deep State reports that Russian forces have advanced in the Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhia regions. Unprecedented pressure. According to the Financial Times, Donald Trump tried to convince President Zelenskyy to accept Putin's ultimatums. Otherwise, the Russian dictator would destroy Ukraine. Internal resistance to the Kremlin regime. Who in Russia dare to speak out against the dictatorship and where exactly? Hamas is Russia, renewed fighting in the Gaza Strip and how it connects to Ukraine. All that and more, right now. Hello everyone, my name is Volodymyr. Please subscribe, hit that like button, let's move on to the news. Ukraine's defense forces struck the Novo-Kuybyshev oil refinery in Russia's Samara region. The General Staff confirms this information. It's known that this refinery supplies fuel to the Russian army, so yes, it's a completely legitimate target. Ukraine also hit the Orenburg gas processing plant and a fuel depot in temporarily occupied Berdyansk.
We are preparing certain steps on the front line and responding to every Russian strike. I spoke with Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky, including about our long-range capabilities. We see progress both in distance and in accuracy of our long-range sanctions against Russia. In fact, every 1 or 2 days, Russian oil refineries are being hit, and this helps bring Russia back to reality.
Russian troops have advanced in the Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhia regions, that's according to Deep State. More details on the front line and around it in our next report.
Russia is returning to mechanized assaults. Widespread use of armored vehicles has been recorded in several sectors of the front at once, most of all in the Pokrovsk area. The Ukrainian armed forces decapitated an entire enemy battalion by striking its command post, while the Russians continue their futile attempts to break through to their own near Dobropilya, suffering enormous losses in the process. Everything happening on the front today. Watch it right now. Military analysts on both sides of the front report that Russia has decided to return to the tactic of mechanized breakthroughs. In the past week alone, 3 such cases have already been recorded. And each time, the Russian column was destroyed and the infantry failed to gain a foothold. The latest attempt was no exception.
The Russians were detected and kept under observation as reported on the channel, while strikes were simultaneously carried out on their equipment 20 kilometers from the front line. Visually, the columns didn't even reach the Ukrainian positions.
At the same time, the occupiers tried to take advantage of the weather conditions near Pokrovsk. Given the rain and fog, it's now harder for both sides to operate drones. So, Russia decided to use this time to attempt a breakthrough with special equipment. Notably, the column was destroyed, and the surviving infantry scattered to the outskirts, after which our soldiers cleared them out on the front line.
Just now, literally for the past day, they've been trying to break into Pokrovsk itself. Yeah. They even tried to show that they had made some progress somewhere, but we neutralized them. There are already full-scale clearing operations going on for 18 hours straight across all sectors. The attempt in the Mirnograd direction also was unsuccessful, even though several, so to speak, units moved in there, trying to attack from different sides and already reporting that there are some initial successes. So we can see that we are very effectively destroying all these directions.
At the same time, a column of armored vehicles tried to break through a bit north of Pokrovsk in the direction of Dobropilya. Russian units still remain encircled there, and in order not to lose these mini bridgeheads, they are still trying to send reinforcements to them. Russia made another push toward the village of Shakova. Spoiler, the vehicles never made it to the settlement.
Shakov is so important because a road runs through it that could theoretically be used to supply the Russian troops trapped in the Dobropilya pocket. But everything became concentrated around Vladimirovka, which turned into a kill zone for Russian armored groups. As a result, the enemy, that is Russia, massed significant forces in a very limited area. That's why the defense forces fired at the Russians with everything they had: drones, artillery, and GMLRs.
At the same time, despite already having 3 failed attempts to break through with vehicles, analysts believe the Russians are unlikely to change this tactic. The main reason is the Russian command, which is directing the offensive in Donetsk region.
Let's recall that the Russian group is commanded by the very same legendary Sukorapov Akhmedov. If the general was recklessly sending columns to their doom near Vuhledar a couple of years ago, as two majors wrote in a Z channel, and nothing was done about it, then it's highly likely that he will just as thoughtlessly send columns forward in new offensive sectors, the two majors write.
Near Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region, the situation has been somewhat stabilized. Sabotage groups are currently unable to infiltrate the city from the northwestern outskirts. But in southern Ukraine, on the contrary, the situation is worsening. The enemy has regrouped there and is amassing forces near Kherson, according to the command.
We do have information that the enemy is indeed concentrating a certain number of assault groups in the Oleshki area in order to continue the offensive and, moreover, to carry out more search and strike operations near the Antonivsky Islands. In addition, the enemy is trying to improve the engineering and fortification equipment of their positions where they are currently entrenched. In other words, on the left bank, he is no longer primarily focused on taking the island part, although he hasn't given up on this and continues to send groups to try to secure those positions. But overall, he is more focused on holding his ground and preventing the Ukrainian defense forces from carrying out their active and effective operations.
At the same time, the Ukrainian defense forces managed to strike not only at columns of equipment but also at enemy personnel. For example, recently Z military correspondents confirmed information from the Ukrainian armed forces that the general staff had released a few days earlier. Ukrainian aviation carried out a targeted strike on enemy concentrations in the Zaporizhzhia direction and destroyed the headquarters of the occupying forces advancing there.
Ukrainian aviation smashed concentrations of Russian troops at 3 locations at once and destroyed the headquarters of Russia's 108th Battalion. This last point has been confirmed by the Z chauvinists themselves.
Given the effectiveness of the defense forces lately, which includes the daily destruction of tanks, armored fighting vehicles, and artillery, as well as the elimination of more than 1,000 Russians just in the past day, even at the cost of such losses, they have not managed to achieve any significant success on any section of the front since the beginning of autumn.
Today marks the autumn-winter phase of this same offensive. However, the Russians have not achieved even operational tactical successes as of today. Even though the forces thrown into the infantry components on all these fronts are just insane in number, many times greater than the number of our assault troops, our infantry, yet today we see the result.
Over the past 24 hours, Russia lost at least 890 soldiers killed and wounded. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, the total number of Russian casualties has reached 1,131,070. In the past day alone, Ukrainian forces destroyed 2 Russian tanks, 45 artillery systems, and dozens of other pieces of enemy equipment. On the Kherson front, an unprecedented level of desertion among Russian troops has been recorded. More about the reasons and consequences in our report.
The Russian army has been swept by a wave of desertion. In the 4th year of the war, no one except the man in the bunker is looking for action, and no one believes in Putin or Kremlin propaganda that romanticizes the front anymore.
Stagnation. I want some action.
Instead, Russian soldiers are looking for any way to escape as far as possible from the Kremlin's action in Ukraine. For example, our partisans from the Atesh movement report a mass exodus of servicemen in the Kherson direction.
Brutal treatment by commanders, senseless assaults, and the lack of rotation are forcing soldiers to abandon their positions.
They decided to fix the situation in Putin's army in the Russian way. Instead of improving service conditions, they tightened control over the exhausted and half-starved contract soldiers, set up reinforced checkpoints and patrols in the frontline areas. The military police are conducting thorough document checks and searches in search of deserters.
Agents from among the local residents report that deserters often seize residential houses, and if discovered, they use weapons.
Moreover, Russian deserters have increasingly started taking hostages with them.
Right now, I am in a store with hostages. I am holding a live F1 grenade without the pin. I just want to be taken to the prosecutor's office. I will surrender at the prosecutor's office.
The Russian soldier was driven to such a radical step by the conditions of service, the blatantly careless attitude of the command toward the lives of the personnel, and the ongoing abuse in the unit.
I am Konstantinov Sergei Sergeyevich. a private of the 60th Separate Rifle Brigade, 9th Company, 3rd Battalion. I was forced to leave the front line and walk away on my own while wounded because my commander threatened to tie me to a tree overnight so that the birds would kill me or to shoot me since I refused to carry out a combat mission while wounded.
Punishment in the form of tying someone to a tree in the open is, in general, a favorite disciplinary tactic among Russians on the front line. Instead of eliminating their own contract soldiers themselves, the command simply puts the penal troops in a visible spot, where in just a few hours they are taken out by Ukrainian FPV drones.
I am a serviceman of the 25th Combined Arms Army, 67th Division, 36th Regiment, Assault Detachment. For the third day, we've been handcuffed to a tree, without food, without water, without anything. They don't take us anywhere to use the toilet. That's how things are.
Not everyone manages to survive even a single day in such conditions. Surviving even more brutal punishments in the Russian army is much harder, says another deserter named Sergei. The 34-year-old Russian still can't believe that he actually managed to escape from the front.
We're going all in. That's it. My life and freedom are literally at stake. As long as the war goes on, well, they'll erase me. There won't even be a trial.
And all because a Russian electrician, mobilized into the army, refused to take up arms and go kill Ukrainians.
My crime is simply that I didn't want to shoot at people, that's all. The military police showed up. I told them to fuck off, basically. Just told them to fuck off, that's it. They took me to Zaitsevo and, well, they electrocuted me. And the device they used to charge batteries, where you can adjust the voltage and amperage, basically one clamp, like a crocodile clip, to my earlobe, the other to my finger, and off they went.
What did they want?
What?
Why torture you want?
They didn't want anything. They just electrocuted me, poured cold water on me. For an hour and a half, sometimes two, with a hose. For no reason. Just procedures, special effects.
But no matter how much Russian army soldiers are intimidated in basements by their own generals, the will to live prevails. Especially since in the case of desertion, the chances of survival are much higher than in yet another meat grinder assault. Catastrophic losses at the front are yet another reason for the mass exodus from the front lines.
Why? Because it's one failure after another there. Every third wounded soldier doesn't make it to evacuation. There are major problems there. There, the so-called offensive actions have slowed down by 2 or even 3 times, as reported by American analytical centers. It's a disaster there.
Recently, being wounded at the front for Russian soldiers has become equivalent to being killed, according to military analysts. Russian medics simply leave their own wounded, the so-called 300ths, to die at their positions. Partisans in the Russian rear also report that the situation with evacuating the wounded is simply catastrophic. The command of some units deliberately does not send transport or evacuation teams for wounded soldiers, condemning them to a long and painful death.
Due to the lack of vehicles and evacuation orders, the occupiers die within the first day after being wounded. Many of them could have survived if they had received timely medical assistance. Officers of these units openly state that it is easier to find new people than to risk equipment. This is direct evidence that the command of the Russian army considers its soldiers expendable.
But even this expendable resource eventually runs out, just like the money to maintain it. The Kremlin's treasury is empty. The aggressor country has no funds left to pay endless death benefits and, more importantly, signing bonuses for contracts with the Ministry of Defense. As a result, the authorities in at least 8 regions of Russia have reduced one-time payments several times over. In Taganrog, Chuvashia and Samara region. There, the amount has been cut from 3 and 2 million to just 800,000 rubles.
This is an avalanche that started. Putin has no money. Putin no longer has the means to directly hand out money and maintain what has become a mercenary army.
No money means no fools willing to die at the front, analysts explain. Recruitment offices across the border have long been unable to meet the Kremlin's targets. No tricks work anymore.
That's crony capitalism for you. It's all about siphoning off the cash. So the formula right now is this. People profit from the war, while the population in the end loses its initiative and
along with it, the desire to go to the front. But the desire to get away from that very front and as quickly as possible for any amount of money just keeps growing. Which means that the Russian army will very soon indeed face a much larger and more significant wave of widespread desertion and abandonment.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
President Volodymyr Zelenskyy commented on the situation at the front and Russia's losses. Speaking live on NBC, he said this.
we are not losing this war, and Putin is not winning. And really, his army now in the weak position. I think so, because they really, from the beginning of this war, they could occupy 1% of our land, but they spend 1,300,000 people.
Notice that President Zelenskyy mentioned a higher number of enemy losses. Earlier, Trump spoke of about 1.5 million. Most likely, the general staff has confirmed figures, while the president's voiced approximate ones. Meanwhile, resistance to the Kremlin regime inside Russia is growing, especially in Bashkortostan, one of the regions with the highest number of soldiers killed in the Russian war against Ukraine. All details in our next story.
Bashkortostan has become a source of cannon fodder for the Kremlin. The Russian elite sends Bashkirs to the front without caring about the losses. As a result, Bashkortostan leads in the number of deaths in the so-called special military operation.
The Russian Empire will soon cease to exist, and then our peoples will finally gain the long-awaited freedom. Everything is being decided right now. The time has come to act. Do not stay silent. Rise up and bravely fight for your cherished independence, bringing true freedom to all the oppressed peoples everywhere.
This is an address from the soldiers of the Bashkort Company. The unit is fighting on Ukraine's side in the International Legion. Meanwhile, in Russia itself, the company has been declared a terrorist organization. The company's symbol is a flag in the national colors of Bashkortostan, but in a different order, like on the old flag from the times when the Bashkirs fought for independence in 1917 to 1919. A crescent in the center completes the design. The Bashkirs are helping Ukraine defend its independence and dream that this very independence will come to their own home as well.
The Republic has its own oil, gold, copper, and industry, and Moscow is sucking all of it away for itself.
But the Bashkorts themselves are rather poor.
We live in poverty. They take everything. All of this should be ours. They can't live without us.
Not the other way around?
They won't be able to. We will succeed.
But the Bashkir struggle is taking place not only at the front, but also behind the lines. The underground movement in Bashkortostan has been active since 2022, and it is overseen by that very same Bashkort Company.
There are dedicated activists, individuals who, under our careful guidance and unwavering direction, are diligently working for the greater good of our beloved motherland, that is to say, for the prosperity and well-being of Bashkortostan. And honestly, sometimes I truly find myself deeply thinking, it's incredibly hard to accurately say who is in greater, more immediate danger. Is it us here, actively fighting in Ukraine, on the brutal battlefield, right at the front lines, with a powerful rifle firmly in our hands? Or is it the innocent civilians back there, diligently carrying out their essential tasks, when literally anyone around them could potentially be an unseen lurking enemy?
Because of the enormous risk, all operations of the Bashkir underground remain secret. But sometimes footage of the struggle does appear online. For example, the burning of the Russian Empire flag in January of this year. And from time to time, symbols appear on the streets of Bashkortostan that are hard to miss. For instance, transformer substations sometimes catch fire by accident.
Arson of critical transformer substations, important workshops and various enterprises actively working for the national defense industry. And after that, we have information that work there stopped and will remain halted for a long time. We also had an operation to mine a bridge.
The underground does a lot of work, but carefully. Many operations will only become known years later, and some the world will never know about. But every operation, even the smallest, is a step toward the freedom of Bashkortostan, and they will achieve it.
Ukraine is fighting for freedom. Support independent Ukrainian journalism so we can keep telling the truth about Russia's war. Click the link in the description to become our sponsor. Now is a great moment to subscribe and like this video, and please share it so more people can see it. Thank you, and glory to Ukraine. The Financial Times has published details of a meeting between the US and the Ukrainian presidents. According to the paper, Trump tried to persuade Zelenskyy to accept Putin's ultimatums. Otherwise, the Russian dictator would destroy the Ukraine. The publication says the White House chief passed on Putin's words from the recent phone conversation. Now, there are quite a few nuances here. First, it might be disinformation that the Financial Times decided to publish for some reason. Second, if Putin really said those words and then Trump repeated them, it shows that the US president still believes the Russian dictator, even though Putin keeps deceiving and manipulating him. And third, what have Russians been trying to do since 2014? Improve the lives of tens of millions of Ukrainians? Of course not. Russia wants to destroy Ukraine, but can't. So why would that change if Zelenskyy refused Putin's ultimatums? It wouldn't. Exactly. By the way, President Trump has already commented on reports claiming he pressured Zelenskyy to give Russia the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Answering journalists' questions, Trump said this.
No, we never discussed it. We think that what they should do is just stop at the lines where they are, the battle lines. You have a battle line right now. The rest is very tough to negotiate. If you're going to say, you take this, we take that, there's so many different permutations. So what I say is they should stop right now at the battle lines. Go home, stop killing people, and be done.
Russian forces struck energy infrastructure in the Chernihiv region, causing major damage and emergency power outages. The enemy also attacked a mine in the Dnipropetrovsk region using drones. Fortunately, all miners were safely brought to the surface. No one was injured. And now, a few words about renewed fighting in the Gaza Strip and how it connects to Ukraine. So, Hamas terrorists opened fire on Israeli soldiers in Rafah, killing an officer and an sergeant. Once again, Hamas militants, who under the peace agreement were supposed to lay down their arms, violated the ceasefire. In response, Israel launched strikes on the terrorists. Here's the point. US President Donald Trump had earlier boasted about ending the war between Israel and Hamas, claiming the terrorists had agreed to disarm. In the end, Hamas kept killing Israelis. Palestinians, they don't care. So, how is this connected to Ukraine? Trump keeps calling for Russia and Ukraine to stop fighting. But what guarantee is there that the terrorist state, Russia, won't act just like Hamas did? Right, there are no such guarantees. Which means even the words of the most powerful man in the world may remain just that, words. Finally, a story about the Louvre heist. Conspiracy fans will love this one. Thieves entered the museum using a construction lift, wearing yellow vests and used grinders to cut through display cases. Among the stolen items, the crown of Empress Eugenie. However, the robbers later decided to get rid of it. Now about those conspiracy theories. Just before the robbery, US Vice President J.D. Vance posted an AI-generated video showing Trump wearing a crown and dumping filth from an airplane on Americans. Apparently, that was the White House's response to protests across the US under the slogan "No Kings." People took to the streets, accusing the Trump administration of authoritarianism. So, here's the funny part. Trump in a crown, and then the thieves toss away a crown. Maybe they were supporting No Kings movement. Just kidding. Oh, am I? That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your support. Strength to Ukraine's defenders. Glory to Ukraine. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment and share. See you next time.